Sophie, awesome. Caitlin, Sarah, Mary, Heather. Welcome everybody. We're so excited that you guys are excited about doing this. I know for me, it really helps me feel connected to program. Being connected with you guys, we have the participants doing this once a week as well, and the veteran group, Vet to Vet, is doing Zoom calls, and it lets us remember as we're here on this pretty empty property that we're still Pegasus, and this is what makes us feel connected during these times that we're all a little bit separated, right? But we can be separate and still connected. And Jeff has a great term for it. Jeff over there, and Sharita's over there, guys. Move the phone and say hello. So what do we say, Jeff? Physical distancing, social connection?
Yes, physical distance, social connection.
Physical distance and social connection. So today we're going to do a little bit with one of the horses with leading, but we're going to go a little bit deeper than that. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands. I can't see all of you, but I know that you pretty much all of you know that we're doing a program. We've been doing a program. It'll be 2 years this November, called the Equus Effect, and we began it with the veterans, and we've since expanded it. We're doing victims of sexual trauma. We've expanded it to St. Christopher, some St. Christopher's students, BOCES. It's really a social emotional health program, and it's amazing. And the thing about this program called the Equus Effect, some of you have been participating, some of you have done training and have done horse handlers for this program. But what it is about the program is it's really affected anybody who's been through the training or been a part of it, because it's very hard to unknow something that you've learned. So even though I've been with horses, right, and you guys who are in it are saying yes, my whole adult life I've worked professionally with horses, and over this period of time with the Equus Effect, everything about my relationship with horses is different. And I found this winter doing the participant groups, the unmounted programs, all the instructors, a lot of whom are facilitators, really also changed their way of being with our students without really even intending to. So, and a lot of this is based on the things that we learned in the Equus Effect program that have changed the way that we do things and the way that we think about things, and really most importantly, the way that we're relating with our horses. So what we're going to talk about a little bit today in here before we go I think we're going to get Charisma and work with her a little bit. What we're going to talk about today is going to supplement not just your relationship with the horses, but the way that you lead the horses in program, the way that you connect with the horses, and ultimately the way you connect with the students that you're working with. It's really, there's a lot of wonderful takeaways from this. So what we're going to start with, it's kind of like, you've all been to volunteer orientation, you've all been in program, a lot of you have been leaders. This is kind of what you didn't learn in a volunteer orientation. Things that are going to be a little different that you're going to hear about today in the way that we work with the horses with the veterans program, because it's a very experiential program. It's not so much about hard and fast rules. It's really about connection with the horses. And the fundamental thing that we work off of is what we call the wisdom of the prey. And we're going to go through this a little bit, and then I'm going to transfer it over to how this works and transfers to the way that we work with the horses. So the wisdom of the prey is basically just some hard facts about horses that some of it you're going to know, some of it you may not know. And we're going to kind of see how these things relate to how we relate to the horses. So the first one, it's just a simple fact. Horses have been around for over 50 million years, which is crazy. Like, I didn't know that. That's a long time for them to be around. So they're doing something right, is what we like to say. They're keenly aware of the intentions around them, and they can sense breathing, muscle tension, and heart rate from up to 30 feet away. So that's something I want you to keep in the front of your minds when you're with the horses. So they're able to sense those things and be aware of those things from up to 30 feet away. And we'll talk about how that affects you every time you're anywhere near them, actually, and even not so near them. Why have they developed these sensitivities? Why do they have them? Because if they make a mistake, they're dinner, whereas a predator just misses a meal. So we talk about they develop these sensitivities. This is what they have, and that allows them to stay safe because they're allowed to sense the intentions of predators, which we're going to talk about as well. Simple fact, horses have 340-degree vision, so we know that they have a blind spot right in front and right behind their tail, which is also something that you want to be aware of when you're working with the horses, where their blind spots are, where they're going to be less comfortable for you to be hanging out in their blind spot. And they have 170-degree movement with their ears, and their ears also work bilaterally. So we think about their ears and how they're always kind of moving and scanning and listening, and that's all them kind of, they're always on the lookout for any kind of a predator. They have the largest eyes of any land mammal, so that's keeping them able to see. Big eyes, the biggest eyes of any land mammal. And this one I think we all know, and you did learn this in volunteer orientation, they're flight animals. Their instinct is to run and then see whether or not something is dangerous. So that's in there. There's no amount of training in the world that can take that out of them. That's part of their DNA. It's what's kept them alive for 50 million years. So that's just part of who they are. That's something very innate in them. And always something we have to be mindful of when we're working with our students and working with the horses in program. That ability to do that is there. Horses do not manipulate or strategize. They respond and anticipate. That's it. They're not, if any of you think of a cat, for instance. I can't really say that about a cat. But horses, they do none of that. What you see is what you get. They have a harder time with fear than pain. So horses are beasts of burden, right? They can carry a lot of weight, they can be injured and keep going. They can ignore that. They cannot ignore fear. That is one thing that they're not able to ignore. And one of maybe the biggest things we want to think about with the horses in terms of our work with them is they live in the present, they forgive the past, and they don't project into the future. They care about how we are with them right now, in this moment. And that's very different from, say, dogs. And dogs are also predators. We're predators too. But a dog is based on history. They love you. So you can come home from work, you've had a bad day, you can come home and yell at your dog, and they're going to still wag their tail and come to you. They might even try and make you feel better. It's not like that with horses. Every time you meet them, it's like a new moment. They care about how you are right that minute. So if I work with Mr. Blue every single day for years, but I come into his stall one day and with really not a good energy, and I'm not congruent, or all of these things, he's not thinking about how wonderful I was with him yesterday, that I fed him a bunch of carrots yesterday and I had a great day with him. He's like, hey, I'm not liking the energy I'm getting. That's what he's going to respond to. That's part of the flip side of being in the moment. That's what they care about. The beauty of that, though, is the minute you change your way of being around them, boom, they change their way of being around you. So that's kind of a double-edged sword or something, if you will. When horses feel safe, their instinct really is to cooperate and not compete. So one thing with the veterans that we say is they see the world through the lens of us and not I. So they're herd animals. And the veterans certainly understand this because they work in units, and that's really something that resonates with them. But it's a wonderful thing. We're living in a world where really it's every man for themselves. So there's something very refreshing about that. They're the power of us. It's the we in a herd. And that's how horses feel the best. That's the way that they kind of are. They're as herd animals. There's also packs. People are in tribes, units. there's comfort with people around you, that community that we all look for and kind of seek. Here's another big one that we're going to talk a lot about when we're working with the horses. So as sometimes predators, because we're predators, we like to not think of ourselves as predators, but you know what, we are. We learn to disguise our intentions even from ourselves. And that's that term, a wolf in sheep's clothing. And a horse's job is to help us discover the wolf, and they reward us when we do. So this is something that I want you to really get your heads around, because I have always heard in other horse there's other kind of horse things that deal with the veterans, other programs, and you always hear about you need to be congruent when you're with horses. Congruent meaning you feel, you're not acting one way and feeling a different way. But I was never told the reason why. So here's the why that's going to make it make sense to you. When we feel one way and we act another way, that's predator behavior. We're being predatory. And we are used to that. We are socialized to feel one way and act another way. It's not appropriate for me to be angry and in a bad mood and go to work and act that way at work. I learned to smile, right? You learn to act as if. That's socially appropriate. We teach our children that. But horses aren't good with that. So if you remember that they can, up to 30 feet away, they can sense muscle tension, respiratory rate, and heart rate from up to 30 feet away. So you can't fake that with them. And the reason that becomes predatory is if you think of a lion and they're about to pounce, they're really quiet and really stealth on the outside. Everything seems calm and quiet. But on the inside, their muscle tension, their heart rate, their respirations are through the roof. That is the epitome of being incongruent. And horses see that as predatory. It's really important to know that. So a lot of times we're taught that you might hear that horses mirror you. They actually don't. Because if you're angry, that doesn't mean your horse is angry. If you're angry and you acknowledge that you feel that way, in that moment you become congruent and your horse feels comfortable with you. So all that it is just that self-awareness of how you're feeling, and then just to say it out loud, say it to your horse, say it to yourself, and that's it. They become comfortable being around you. That's what makes them comfortable. So think about that. And that's something new that I had never thought about. Just really being honest with myself. So when we're with the horses, we've really got to be aware of what's going on in us and how are we feeling, and that we can be honest about that. And it really changes the way they are with us. And horses, like other animals who live in herds, tribes, units, for safety, they use something called sociosensual awareness. And it's not touch, sight, or sound dependent. It's more of an internal sense. And think about it, we have that too. We just tend to override it a lot. We tend to override it. Maybe you're around somebody and they don't make you feel comfortable. We're taught to just, I shouldn't feel that way. This guy is dressed really nice, whatever it might be. We're really taught to ignore our gut instincts. And horses kind of require us to really feel what that's about. Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions about any of that? Okay? So how do we take this, and how does this relate to us working with the horses on an everyday basis, and especially taking it out to leading? So let me just give you a simple example of intention when we're working around horses, because we're going to talk a lot about that. So when we're leading our horses, we're used to in program using our voice aids. We say 1, 2, 3, trot. We say whoa. We say walk on. But with the veterans in their leading, we're really specifically telling them no voice, because horses, they use body language. Everything they communicate, it's the language of the body. So we're really stripping away that extra voice command so that the people working with their horses are really able to connect with themselves and getting the results that they want, because they're congruent they're doing what they need to do, they're using their body language and intention. Intention is huge. So intention is what you think you're going to do and how clear you are about that. And horses really sense that. So when I think of even mounted and riding, just as an instructor, even in my own riding, if I have a student that's learning to canter for the first time, they could be doing absolutely everything technically correct. Their position could be right, they're using the right cues, but for some reason, the horse doesn't want to canter. What happens is there's that little doubt in that rider. The body is saying yes, but the heart and the mind are saying, please don't. They're using their aids to say canter, but something deeper in them is saying, I really don't want you to do that. And that's the intention that the horses are picking up on. I've had it happen to myself. Rider goes to a jump, all of a sudden you feel comfortable. As you're approaching that jump, the jump is looking a little bigger than you thought it did, and you have this moment. It's a fleeting second, a moment of doubt where you're not sure. That's when horses are gonna put the brakes on, they're gonna pull out or short stop in front of the jump. That's all about intention. That rider didn't pull back on the reins and change their mind, but their heart wasn't in it. And horses really, really respond to that. So when we're leading, again, big difference is we're not using voice aids. It's about learning to connect with your body language, your intention, and your energy levels. Okay, and I know we know a little bit about energy. If you're leading a horse like Bo, you're gonna bring your energy up, but that doesn't mean it's gonna be a frantic energy. It's gonna be calm, assertive energy. And next, how are we able to make our horse feel comfortable with us by being congruent? We talked about that. That makes them feel safe and allows trust. So in order for our horse to want to be led with us, we have to be the leader. We're going to be essentially a herd of two, with you being the alpha horse. But if you're not congruent and your intentions aren't there and you're not clear, you're not going to be able to make them feel safe and want to be led. There we go. And another one, now definitely another one that you may not have heard in volunteer orientation in our regular trainings, be in the moment and be in your body. Okay? With horses, how many of us are ever really in our bodies? When we do the Equus program, we actually start with something called joint fluidity, where everybody kind of moves their joints, and a body scan. And it's not like yoga, it's just about getting in touch with your body. Think of how many times you've driven somewhere, maybe to work, and you get there and you really don't even know how you got there. Chances are you're right here laughing, yes. Chances are it's like you just went in auto mode and you were in your head the whole time. Were you really safe in those moments? Probably not. Do you think you would have been as aware if somebody was going to pull out in front of you or somebody braked in front of you? Probably not. We spend a lot of time in our heads. We really do. And when we're in our heads, we disappear from the horses. It's like they stop seeing us. So they want to feel comfortable with us. You've got to be congruent and you need to literally be present. And there's a saying that we say is be where your feet are. So when you're with the horses, don't be thinking about what you did yesterday, what you need to do when you get home, what you're having for dinner. Be in the moment. And what helps with that is think about that. If you're a horse leader and you're in your body, you're going to be more able to recognize how they're communicating with you. If you see something that might upset them, you're going to be more aware of your surroundings. And then, in turn, you're going to be able to keep those participants safer. Because that split second is the difference of you noticing something and then responding. So maybe something else can happen in that split second that makes the outcome different. So we really need to be there when we're with our horses. Okay, you want to be aware and listen to your horse's body language and be aware of your own body language as well. And we're going to think about that as we're leading. So again, horses, it's the language of the body. So I'm going to challenge you all, when you come back especially, we all kind of think we know the basics, right? Horses' ears are way back, they're not happy. But think more about the little subtleties of a horse's body language. The little minutia that you may miss if you're not there and paying attention. The listening ears, the muscle tension, their eyes, the way that they're carrying their mouth, where their tension is, swishing of a tail. Be aware of all those things, because again, that's going to keep you one step ahead of the horse, hopefully, and able to have a good result and more success in your leading program. Your own body language, we talk about that. We talk about eyes up a lot, right? You're leading, you want to have your eyes up. It's more than just that eyes up. It's that tall position, that open chest, that tall posture that just shows confidence and your ability to lead. Okay, that's going to be an important thing. We're going to work at that outside as well. One thing that we want to have the opportunity to do in the Equus Effect program, the first part of the day, they actually connect with the horses. Technically they can groom, but we end up just having their hands on the horses. Taking a breath, putting their hands on the horses, and connecting with the horse. A lot of times we all have an agenda, we're busy, we're getting ready for program, and we miss that piece. But horses, leading a horse, they're collaborating with us. So if we can have the connection, we're going to more easily get the collaboration. And that's absolutely what they're looking for. And that doesn't mean you need to do a full-on grooming session with them before. I mean, it would be great if you could. But just taking a breath when you're near them, putting your hands on them, and just spending a moment to connect. Okay? And then we're going to discuss some leading techniques outside. And we're going to talk about, and you're going to remember this, Serena, holding energy. These, again, things we don't really talk about with our normal leading. A lot of times you see leaders, and they're leading the horse, and their arms are up, and they're not moving their arms. You're holding energy there. So we want to let that energy move through your body. That's an important thing. Again, that tall, confident posture. Your intention. And we're leading with finesse and not force. Okay? And we're going to go get Charisma, I think. Charisma? Yeah, let's bring her outside. You think it's too windy? Will we be able to hear? We're going to bring Charisma out to that area. Perfect. Okay. So Sarita's going to go get Charisma, and I think we'll take a walk with her. But I want to see if you have any questions or thoughts about any of the stuff that we just went through. Okay? Oh, no, I take it back. No questions. We'll do questions at the end. Sarita said no.
We do what Sarita says.
Okay. See if there's anything on this too. Okay. All right. I think we can go out and follow Sarita out, right?
I just have to say that I love the horse with the mask and the whole framing of your presentation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That's
So,
great.
my co-host, Mr. Purple, he's with me every week. I love magic markers. I'm obsessed. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm ready when you are.
It's been a lot of fun doing this and having these opportunities with you guys.
She's having so much fun, she doesn't want to do program anymore. She's just going to be a movie star.
It's really too important to do actual programs.
Pushing communication is fun.
Oh, good.
We get
So who wants to virtually touch a horse today?
Yes, virtually touch a horse.
All right, we're going to bring the camera right in.
All right, we're going to go out now with Serena. She's getting Charisma. So I'm not going to lie, I made it easy on myself and chose Charisma. I didn't choose Bo. That was not an accident. Charisma's going to make me look good.
Alright, rule number 1 to being a movie star.
Yes.
You didn't make that.
Wow.
But it makes me like regular people. It makes me relatable. Just relatable.
Really far away.
Minuscule?
Want to get bigger.
From the grass. There we go. That's just she's going for the grass.
But Sarita's calm and assertive energy will not let her do that.
better come on in. All right. Rita, you can come right over. I'm going to take both up for you. You want to go? There she is. There she is. What do you think, Dad? Let me check that. Okay. There's a few things we're going to talk about that, again, is not part necessarily of what you learned in orientation or what we really think about in program. When the veterans come out to say hello to their horse, they're kind of encouraged just to, like we do with the kids, right? They put their fist out. We let their horse say hello. Okay? But the difference is, and what we're going to also start to incorporate in our programs, we have the kids come say hello to the horses, but maybe we miss the piece of what do you think your horses is feeling? So we can kind of increase their language in all of our participants because these are essentially social skills. We all use body language. We use over 90% of our communication, people, is through body language. We just don't realize we do it, but we do it. Maybe we haven't even lost that skill. That's innate in us as well. So we let our kids say, hey, hello, and they're thinking about themselves. But what I'd like to see is expand and say, hey, how do you think Charisma's feeling right now? What are her ears telling you? What is her face telling you? Does she seem relaxed? Does she seem a little bit worried? And we really use a lot of taking a breath. Big, deep breath, and relax. Think about how that can help our participants if we teach them to be aware of the communication and take a breath. Here's another thing, this is just so happening. She is alerting to something. So she is looking off, her ears went forward, her head raised. Her ears went forward so she could hear better. Her head raised so she could see farther, and her expression changed. She's come out of it right now and released back. But what we talk about and what we teach is if you're hanging out with your horse and they alert to something, which means all of a sudden, hey, I see something. What we want to do then is look with them. We're really kind of taught in my whole work life with horses, I've always thought if a horse stops and looks at something, you get their attention, you make them keep going. Well, you know what? Think about that. That's not respectful. So what we teach as well, and I even hate to use the word teach, but we're going to talk a little bit about what I'm doing now, is when they alert to look with them. That shows them, I see what you're seeing, I'm looking too. And then we have them watch when that horse relaxes back down. So a big piece of the Equus effect is a horse's ability, and it's what's kept them around for 50 million years, to be on high alert, that hypervigilance, look, everything gets ready for flight, they see that it's okay, and they can come right back down to grazing. We call that emotional agility, and we could talk a little bit about that more next week. But horses have this incredible ability to kind of go through their emotions in a wave. They don't stay stuck up at high alert. They wouldn't have lived 50 million years. Because if they were worried about what might have happened, they're gonna miss what's right there in the bushes, right? So that's why they're in the moment. They need to be aware. So now what we have them do, and this is what we've also incorporated with the kids in the unmounted program, and me too, we would think, oh, they're going to connect with these horses, so they come right in, they get their brushes, and they go in and get right at it. You know what we did this winter? All of a sudden, that seems so wrong. What I had been doing for 15 years, all of a sudden seemed wrong, because, hey, you're going to go with this horse with your brush and your agenda, honestly. And now we're teaching the kids, you know what? You're just going to go over, and this is what the veterans do. They just put their hands on their horse, and they take some breaths, and they kind of ground themselves. and just allow themselves to just be. Because when are we ever just being and just being quiet? Never, right? We tend to feel really uncomfortable with silence. We look to fill the space, right? We're always looking to fill that space. The term, can you hear me? Can't hear me? Another cool thing that you may or may not know is kind of the physiological stuff that happens when we're with horses. This is hard science now. Horse people have always known, oh, it makes us feel great, but now we're starting to understand the whys. So when two hands are on your horse, and this is something we really stress with the veterans when they're with their horses, they can't be like this, because then they're not all in. But the complete connection is when both hands are on your horse. And what it is when you're touching your horse, they're releasing oxytocin, is released in your body, and you're releasing to them endorphins. So it's like this cool connection that happens when both their hands are on. And we have the veterans that we bring the brushes out probably 15 minutes into when they went and kind of spent that time, quiet time with their horse. There are times when they never even pick up a brush, because it's not about the task of grooming, it's about the connection with the horse. And it's really amazing the things that come out of that, the things that happen with that. Also, they're really taught how their way of being is affecting the horse's way of being. So maybe I'm not being congruent right now. I'm feeling really upset and I'm trying to act really happy. Charisma would probably show me that, and you should see the things that we've seen with some of the horses and the veterans, or whoever the clients are. Horses that are usually very quiet, who are just moving around and swishing their tail and agitated. And when that person steps back, takes a breath, just gets congruent, say, oh, you know what, I'm feeling really nervous right now. And that's what they say to themselves, then the horse gets more comfortable. There we go. So a little more focus on the horse, basically. So when we look on how we bring that to our leading, we talk a lot about intention. We see the licking and the chewing. That's a big one that we ask people to look for. That's a submissive thing, the licking and the chewing. So all the basic leading skills in terms of where your body position is, that this is not around, that's all still there. There we go. Now the old Liz wanted to just pull on her to stop her, right? Instead, I want to take a breath myself and just think of where I am in this moment. And then I'm going to eyes up, my intentions are clear, and walk with her. I take a half step of a walk. And I talked about not holding energy. So a lot of times we see our leaders kind of do this. They're holding this up. But that's not a natural way to walk, and you're actually holding your energy. I'm making Jeff and Candace run right now.
We're riding along
in a normal walk, there's energy flowing through your body. Your arms are moving. Your walk is purposeful. Do you see this? And now I'm going to try. I thought it. You guys can probably walk. Now when I'm going to think about walking without pulling back on her. I've got to lower my energy down. There we go. And I'm going to try and halt. Again, no voice. I'm going to slow my body. And stop. There we go. It really takes a while, and sometimes it'll take me